Hi, everyone. I have Tracy Poizner with me today. Tracy works with stepmoms, teaching them to parent with confidence so they can grow a stable, happy family. She also has a Facebook group called the Spectacular Stepmoms and has a YouTube channel with over 70 videos geared towards stepmoms. So I'm really excited that you're here today, Tracy. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I think this is awesome.
So good, so good. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself and how you kind of got your niche of working with stepmoms?
Sure. Well, I've been a holistic health practitioner for about 20 years. I'm a homeopath, actually. And in my personal life, I am a stepmom. First, I was a mother. My daughter is all grown up now. But my husband has 3 kids. And when we first got together, those 3 kids lived very far away, 3-hour drive from us with their mom. And I had known them, as it happens, I had known them for a few years before we got together. We were friends and whatever. So I knew his kids from the time they were very little. And then when we started seeing each other, you know, they were living far away and he's going there to visit them. And I didn't think really that I would have anything to do with them, to be honest. They came here a few times a year for a couple of days, and he was going there every weekend to visit them. So I didn't really think much about it. And in the way that it often happens to stepmoms, we eventually found ourselves with all 3 of them having come to live with us. And I will qualify that by saying that they came one at a time. So we always joke, he and I, that we have been the serial parents of an only child 4 times in a row. Because my daughter was still here when he lived here. And then she went off to school, and his oldest son came and stayed just for 6 months and then decided that he wanted to be back with his mom. And then the middle boy came and stayed, and he was with us all through high school, and he's now off on his own. And then finally he was just gone to university when the youngest, his sister, came, and she was with us for 2 years and finished high school. Now she's in university. So it was sort of when everybody was here already, and I realized that like they're young adults now, and we did it. We did it. That part is over, and we're all okay. And it was like having come through an incredible storm or a tornado or something, and you can sort of look around at the damage and say, but we're all okay. And I realized that I had been doing some things that really worked. I mean, I had been purposefully using some principles that made a lot of sense to me, but I knew now that they really worked. And I wanted to know, like, is it just me and my own personal take on this, or is there some kernel of universal truth in what I'd been doing to make things work in my family? And first I had to think about everyone I knew who was a stepmom, because this is a really critical thing. Stepmoms practically don't know anyone else in the whole world who is in the same situation that they're in. And I had never thought to reach out to any of the people I know who had married a guy with kids to say, like, is it like that for you? Because it feels completely and totally unique when you're in it. And it also feels like a kind of breach of, I don't know if etiquette is the right word, but like, it's like asking someone to air their dirty laundry or something. The stepmoms don't talk to each other in the way that moms do, to say, well, you have a 2-year-old too. Is he doing this? Like, it's not about stages of development, because everybody's like, the breakup of your marriage is involved in, you know, there are some details that are just so difficult. Like, do the parents get along with each other? Your husband, let's say, and his ex-wife, and is she remarried, and how often do you have the kids? And it all seems like kind of private, icky stuff or something. And we don't talk to each other. We don't reach out to each other. So it's really hard to know if what you're going through is normal, or, you know, or that you need to do something about it. So I reached out. It turned out that I knew quite a lot of people. When I got to thinking about it, I was really surprised. And I just wanted to interview everybody. I sent a lot of people messages and I said, I want to talk to you about this if you're open to that. So I said, here's what I think. And that's what I was doing. Does that make sense to you? And they all said, oh, absolutely, definitely, So I knew that the women I knew who had succeeded and had, stable, long-lasting, happy, blended families were doing these things. And I, as I expanded on the first thing, I thought, I bet there are more, and I've been able to identify what I think are universal principles that have to be in place in all successful step families, no matter how it looks in your house, because every single family is unique. So I moved from there to starting a Facebook group. And right. I was really disappointed with a lot of the groups that I dipped my toe into, as it were, because they weren't being moderated. Like, they had administrators, but there weren't people there who were trying to train or pass on good advice or whatever it might be. They were just providing an environment for women to talk to each other. And a lot of it was really negative, really, really negative too. It was like a harsh place to be. And I said, come on, like, there's got to be a place where you can vent your problems and get back good advice. Nobody wants to vent on Facebook to hear 25 strangers say you should leave your husband. Like, that's not really.
No.
Oh yeah, like all the time.
Oh.
So my group, started out really small, and it's just grown into an amazing community of women who are learning how to give each other really good advice. And it just warms my heart. It's a fantastic thing.
That's awesome. Because it sounds like what you said, it's very isolating for moms, because for stepmoms,
it is, we don't talk to each other, and we also don't, I had the benefit of having been a mom.
Yeah.
And I imagine, really all of the people who are listening to your podcast are probably moms, but I bet a lot of them, have stepkids that, their husband may have older children who came into your extended family when you got married, and you may or may not have them all of the time or part of the time or just some of the time. But it's a very, very common type of family now where, someone meets a guy who had kids and then they go on to have their own children together. But this blended family thing is a brand new concept in society. I think maybe 40, 45 years ago were the first bits of legislation starting in the US. In California, I think, was the first place where, like, joint custody was an actual thing.
Right.
Before that, it was always that one parent kept the kids and the other one might or might not visit them. And the idea of kids who were living in two households, that is something completely brand new. And that there should be a kind of mother who is called stepmother, but who has no idea what she's really supposed to be doing, because it's for sure she's not supposed to really be a mom. That never works out. It's so new. Like, nobody knows how to do it. And that is evidenced by the fact that 2 out of 3 step families fail. They end in divorce.
And that's huge. 2 out of 3.
It's huge. And like I say, who would gamble their most important life investment in an enterprise that has a 1 in 3 chance of working out? It's kind of crazy, but the difficulties are so compounded from what you find even in original marriages, first families that already have 50% failure rate, like, we have to do better. We have to be able to figure out how to get this right the second time.
Yeah.
Like, really. Yeah. And I think that if stepmoms are better prepared for the challenges by having us share our experiences and figure out, okay, girls, like, what works here? Like, what do you have to be able to do in your house? And then have helped figure out how to do that.
Yes.
We're increasing our odds of being successful, and it's the most important piece of your life. Of course it is. So I feel really motivated to help women who are dating or living with or married to a guy who has kids from a previous relationship, to know these things that are the hallmarks of successful blended families, and then to just get help if you need to figure out exactly what this looks like in your home, how to do that.
And it makes sense. Like I read on one of your blogs or on your Facebook group that you said that you're a wilderness guide for stepmoms, and now it makes sense. Like that's kind of,
well, that's I didn't know what to call myself. Like, am I a coach? Am I a stepmom coach? That sounds a bit funny, but I do feel like a guide, because this is uncharted territory, not only for all of us as a societal thing, as I just said, like it's such a brand new thing that we don't have generations of women who have been stepmoms that we've like learned how to do this. And there is no step maternal instinct. There's we're women, and we mostly, whether we're in touch with it or not, another story, but we have maternal instincts, an animal instinct of how to nurture and care for and protect our kids. And there is no step maternal instinct. Like, what the hell are we supposed to do? These kids have two parents. Where do we fit? And mostly we spend a few years stumbling around trying to be something that we're not supposed to be, and feeling rejected if that isn't welcome, and not understanding that it wasn't ever supposed to be like that, and you're supposed to be something different. It's different. And being a stepmother is really nothing at all like being a mom. And for some women, that is really hard. How can I say? For some women, these are going to be their only children. They are not going to have their own children. And there's a great deal of their need to be a mother that is invested in their relationship with their kids. And so for them, it's even more important to understand where their place is, so that they don't get hurt, that they don't get their feelings hurt. And that there's, I like to say that human beings are not wired to have two mothers. We just aren't. I mean, we are made genetically from half dad and half mom, and that is what we are. That's all that we are. There's no part of us that is made from anything else than mom and dad.
Right.
And asking kids to accept another mother, it works in the situation where the birth mother is completely accepting and encouraging that. And it does happen in some families where the both new pairs of parents are like super tight, and they encourage the kids to love and respect the opposite. But that's a real, it's a unicorn situation. It's just not possible. Right. Because of the nature of divorce, right? It's really not possible most of the time. So you can't accept to have two mothers, and that sets up something that we know is called the loyalty bind, or loyalty conflict. And people make a mistake, and they think that happens when the kids are being actively taught to dislike the new stepmom, or to not cooperate, or to not behave at her house, or to be mean with dad, or to whatever. But it's really not true. The loyalty bind happens way inside the child's heart. And that is about needing to love and respect both of their parents all the time. And they never, ever get to do that anymore. So they get to love mom when they're at mom's house, and they get to love dad when they're at dad's house. And that leads to a fracture of your personality. It just does. And I think most of us could say it's true that a lot of adults we see walking around today are deeply wounded people inside. Yeah. And it's not always from divorce. Certainly there are lots of other things that happen, but this idea of never being able to be whole, the kids just don't feel whole unless they have the space and the encouragement and the right to love both of their parents at the same time. And that's where the stepmom has a tremendous, huge power, because she can be that place
Right,
for them.
right.
If she has the right, if she can develop the right mindset and understand how to go about it, she can be the most important person in the lives of those kids. And that's a wonderful place to be, even if you're not their mother.
Right, right.
And they can love you for that. Even if they're not warm and fuzzy with you, they can love you for that. So I always say, you know, what I want is for my stepkids to say something lovely at my funeral.
Mm.
You know, I don't need them to be nice to me every single minute of every day.
Yeah.
But I know that because of how we've been together, that they are going to look back on their time living with us and say that I was a good influence in their lives, and they're glad that I was a part of their life. And that's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like I say to my audience, my listeners, the ladies in my group, you know, winning is winning. It doesn't matter if you win in overtime or sudden death overtime, or, you know, the final field goal of the game, or a penalty shot, or whatever. Like, winning is what happens at the end.
Yeah.
When you said, wow, that was a great game, even if we were behind all the time until the very last minute. When they stand up at your funeral and say, I don't know where I would be today except for that lady, even if they, you know, that's what you want. And of course, you want to enjoy a nice relationship. I'm not saying that none of it matters, but sometimes we can't see the bigger picture when we're, you know, when we're right inside it. And you're going to have these kids in your life for all the rest of your life, for 40, 50, 60 more years. You have a long time to get it right.
Yeah.
You have a long time for the relationship to change and grow and develop, just the way it does with biological children.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that you mentioned about that loyalty. Is often what we do, I'm a single mom and I've gone through that too, is we break up. Every picture, everything of your ex is tossed out. Like there's no, not saying I want pictures of him all over my house, but that's a huge thing. One of the first things we do, we shred them, we burn them, we do this. So there's no remnants. It's interesting that you mentioned that loyalty.
Yeah. So what I tell people all the time is that the kids need to have those things around. That, you know, if you're a stepmom and obviously your partner is dad, I mean, I guess there can be same-sex partners. And when I say we don't have room for two moms, I'm not referring to that kind of situation. But I think that it's a wonderful thing for the kids to have either pictures in their room or a photo album, pictures of mom. You have to, well, this is like one of the things that I should probably talk about them in order, but you have to respect the birth mom. And you might actually hate her, and you might think she's a terrible parent, and she might be a terrible parent, but you have to respect the fact that this child needs, in a very fundamental way, to love his or her mother. And they are, you're setting them up to hate a part of themselves when you don't make room for that. So it's not easy, because a lot of times the biological mom is spewing venom and hatred at this new wife of her ex-husband, right? And it's super hard to say, I don't care about any of that. She's a nice lady, you know. But you have to find ways to make it be okay and say, whatever I think of her, I don't live with her. I'm not married to her, but this is her child, and they don't get to divorce her. You don't get to divorce your mother. And you know, they are struggling with something that they need help with. And so, you know, sometimes the very least that we can do is to make it be okay that they can miss their mom when they're at your house. They can say that they miss their mom, and that it's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that they don't like you or they don't love dad. It is what it is, you know? And I think that something that very frequently goes wrong, and this is the core of my message, I guess, if there is one, to stepmoms, is that it's really all about dad. Like if these, you know, if he's the dad of these kids, your job is to help him. It's not to help him raise his kids. Your job is to help him to be the best parent that he can possibly be. Mm-hmm. And there are a million ways that you can do that. And your job is to help the kids to get the maximum, you know, the more connection, more attention, more love from their dad in the time that he's with them. That's your job. And if you make it about that, you can't go wrong. You can't ever go wrong making it be about dad. So I had an experience very early on that really changed my life, and it set me, you know, on this, I can say now that it set me on the path to where I am today. But when we had just recently gotten together, my now husband and I, we were coming home from a long day trip with his kids, and everybody was tired. And so I drove the car and he sat in the back with two of his kids, and the other one was up front with me. And so everybody was kind of passed out in the car on this long drive home. And at one point, when I looked in my rearview mirror, I could see that my stepdaughter, she was 6 at the time. She had her eyes closed, but she wasn't sleeping. Right. I could tell because her eyes were squeezed shut so tight, like her whole face was squinched up. And she was holding on to her dad's arm, like really, really tightly. And her eyes were squinched up, and she just kept her face like that. And I just thought, that little girl is wishing so, so hard for something right now. Right. And I know exactly what it is. And I can't make it happen for her. And, you know, I can't make her wake up from this bad dream and make her dad live at home with her again and whatever. But I knew in that second, like, it really made such a profound impact on me that I can tell you that I never told anyone that story, even my husband, in all these years. Until now, I'm telling it. But I realized in that second that this was so profoundly unfair, that I get to have her daddy with me, beside me every day and night for the rest of my life, and she doesn't get to have him anymore. And what the hell, you know?
Yeah.
And it really, really hit me. And I sort of made a vow to myself that I was going to give her all of the dad that I could possibly do, you know, that I was going to make sure that she got to have as many great moments with her dad as she possibly could have. And I did that. And it never set me wrong. And even until this summer, when she was 18 and really needed more dad, because she's about to go out in the world and off to university, and it was a very vulnerable time. Yeah. And after 2 years of, you know, talking to me on a daily basis about her deepest feelings and everything that was going on in her life, and, you know, no holds barred, and suddenly she only wanted dad. And I could say, I get it. Like, yeah. I don't feel rejected. She needs more dad, and it's what she needs. It's not about me at all.
Right.
So, you know, I think you can't ever go wrong with giving them more dad. And you can't ever go wrong respecting their mother and making space for that.
That's huge. Now, with giving them more dad, is there what would that look like? So if a mom's watching, she's going, okay, what does that mean?
So it can mean so many things. I mean, I just started writing a list, actually, because I thought I was going to write an article or something, like 101 ways that, but you know, simple things like women complain about how, you know, well, the kids always want to sit beside him on the couch and I have to give up my spot. Yes. Like, is he not going to sleep in your bed all night? Give up your spot on the couch. Like, and because we also don't understand how triggered we are in our own childhood stuff. Yeah. Like, it's not possible for an adult to feel in competition with a child, like, unless it's your inner child who is in competition with this child, right? So it brings up all kinds of stuff about your own childhood and your relationship with your parents, and stuff that wasn't fair, and things that your older sister always got, whatever. Like, it's going to stir up all that stuff for you. And you need to be able to take a step aside and say, let's get real here. Like, they're here for the weekend. And yes, Yes, you give up your spot on the couch, and you give up your spot in the car if necessary, or on the bus, or next to dad in the restaurant. You just do.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's a really necessary part to, well, let's face it, like, you have the power as a stepmom to take their dad away completely. And lots of
Right.
stepmoms do, right? You're going to move away. And I know lots of adults who tell me that, my parents got divorced, my dad got remarried, and they never wanted to see us. And they moved to another town, or we weren't welcome in their house. It's
Right.
a real thing. So the default fear is that you're going to take dad away. And
Mhm.
and the default situation is that their tank of love from their dad is forever being emptied.
Yeah.
When they
Yeah.
come to visit, it's on empty, and
Right.
it needs to be on full by the time they leave, because it's going to be on empty by the time they come back.
Mm.
And so, you're just trying to do that. You are encouraging dad to do things he might not have thought of. You're giving him good ideas about, you know, things that he can do to connect with his kids, whether it's, like, okay, get up from the TV now and go outside and throw a ball with your kid. Like,
Right.
sometimes we have to, the same way that mothers do with their, biological fathers, we sometimes have to, like, remind them. Or I can't tell you how many hundreds of times I've said to my husband over the years, when's the last time you talked to your kids?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
it was like, yeah, I'll call them later or whatever, but I'm constantly putting it in his ear. Or, send a text to your son and say, blah, blah, blah. I still do that even now.
Right.
I'm the one who, or we go on holidays to visit my husband's family, and I'm the one who says, let's go and do um, this kind of outing that they never do, because he's from, what it's like when you live
Yeah.
in a place, you never do the touristy things. And so his kids hadn't seen some really important landmarks of the area where their dad grew up. Or I'll say, take your kids for a drive around the neighborhood where you used to live. And I don't go. Or I'll say, you guys go out for lunch without me.
Right. Right.
One time they didn't want to come to visit here. As I said, they lived really far away. And at one point, clearly it was understood that anytime they said they wanted to see dad, it made their mom really sad. And so they wanted to take care of her. And that's lovely. But the way it looked is that they said they didn't want to come. And they didn't want to hurt their dad's feelings either. So they
Right.
said they didn't want to come because of me. And I knew perfectly well that, first of all, they didn't care, they actually liked being with me. And second of all, they really did want to see their dad. So what's important here? Lots of other moms say, well, we're not going to let them get away with this. We're not going to let bio mom get away with this. Too bad for them. Then they won't come. Well,
Mm.
wrong. It's just wrong, because you're not reading the right signals. I said, I'm going to go away and your kids will come, because what they need is to be with you more. And that's going to solve this problem.
Right.
So the
Right.
first time I think I pretended to be away, and I stayed with friends around the corner. And so they didn't get to know that they had sort of won, because dad called up and said, you won't believe what happened. Tracy has to go away for the weekend. She's not even going to be here. So you guys can come. And it was
Mm.
perfect, because then they couldn't change their tactic and say, well, there's some other reason that we don't want to come, when we already said it was because of her. And mom had to let them go,
Yes.
because they had done their duty by her. So it was perfect.
Yeah.
And the second time, I think I really was out of town. And I said, I have to go away, arrange for your kids to come this weekend.
Yeah.
Lots of times I go out and I just do something without them. I arrange to visit my friends. I go hang out with my girlfriends, or I go for a walk. I go to the gym, whatever. I've arranged to be out.
Right. Right.
And that makes them have to, have time together. So there's just so many things. You can be the one who's reading the books, the parenting books and the step parenting books. And when you see something that really resonates, then you bring it to dad's attention and say, you should have a look at this, because this explains, so you can be helping him to be all the dad that he can possibly be. And
Right.
I think that that's the successful place. That's the way, I think that's why my stepkids appreciate me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I did that stuff. And I wasn't like fawning all over them and doing stuff for
Yeah.
them. I
Yeah.
wasn't like buying them stuff and, doing their laundry. I never did their laundry when I didn't make their lunches, their dad took care of that. But I also made sure that he was taking care of those things for his kids.
Yeah.
It's really easy for us to, like I said, your maternal instinct makes you just slide right into that, cooking and laundry and babysitting and homework. And I mean, I've done my fair share of homework for sure, but it's easy to get in too far. And so the third thing, if the first one was more dad and the second one was respecting mom,
Mm-hmm.
I would say the third thing is learning how to back off
Mm-hmm.
and let go. And
Yeah.
that is probably true of like every human endeavor of everyone on the planet, right? It's backing off and letting go are really, really hard to do. And it's so easy for us to get in too far without noticing.
Yeah.
And to really start acting like a mom. And I think in most step families, it's best to not act like a mom. There are really complicated like situations. I didn't bring two families of little kids together under one roof, right? And that's a whole different dynamic. And I don't talk much about that because it's not my personal experience. I don't want to just blather on about something that I haven't walked in those shoes. But most of the people who I've spoken to and, books that I've read and people who blog about their own experiences about that say that it seems to work well when you each parent your own kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when you do your best to make a relationship with the other kids based on something else than trying to be a parent.
Yeah.
And it's I have clients in my homeopathy practice who, for instance, have an only child who is in a blended family where there's like 4 kids on the other side, and dad has 1 kid and mom brought 4 kids from the other side. And so then, this lady's name is Mom in their house. Like everybody calls her Mom. And are you going to be the only one who calls her Jane or Mary or whatever? Like, it's really weird. So can he call her Mom? Maybe it's better in that case for his sake, because otherwise he feels like an outsider. But if you're a single woman with no kids and you get together with a guy who's got a 4-year-old, is he supposed to call you Mom? Probably not.
Right.
It's not the right energy. So
interesting. Yeah.
It really is different in every single case. But I think that the principle of like respecting his need to have a mom and his inability to really have 2 moms unless they're both really cooperative with each other. The thing that I suggest people to do is to make a new family with your husband that you invite these children to join. And there are loads and loads of ways to do that too, to make a new family. But we are wired to have a new family because that's what happens when we get married.
Right.
And, so, I mean, for thousands and thousands of years, we have the genetic evolutionary experience of joining a new family when you get married and being embraced by a new family. And that feels okay. You can be in 2 families at the same time.
Yeah.
And nobody feels like they're being a traitor to their parents when they have in-laws, right? Like, I mean, it's just, and sometimes you're very close with your in-laws and sometimes not at all. And that's just the ups and downs of life. But the idea of joining a new family and having sisters-in-law and brothers-in-law and whatever, that's something that we're used to as human beings. And so it's much more likely that the kids are going to be able to feel at ease, more at ease with having 2 families than they do with having 2 mothers.
Agreed. Yeah. So many good nuggets. Like I love first it's not about you. Like that is huge. And that kind of goes in with what you said about filling your daddy meter. Like they need that filled up. It comes empty. And that's such a good visual for stepmoms to think about. When the kids come, they're on dad empty. So that
Right.
needs to be filled up. Like that's such a
Yeah.
huge thing.
Yeah. And I mean, the transition times are a nightmare. And I can't even, like, transitions are a nightmare for most parents who have little
Yes.
kids, right?
Yeah.
Like coming home from school or the end of the weekend or whatever. But I mean, it was always such a hard thing when the kids would come here because it would take them a day and a half to get settled.
Yeah.
And then in a few hours, it was time to go home. Like, and then they'd be antsy about leaving. And they're antsy about leaving because they have to kind of edit every single thing that they're going to say about what they did here to mom. Like, is she going to like it that we had fun doing that? Is she going to,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so complex for them. The reaction that they get from their mom about whatever happened, they have no context for it. They don't understand when they've said something wrong, they don't know why she's upset. And, they did nice things with you. Well, she doesn't want to hear that.
Right. Yeah.
And they don't understand why, what's wrong. Is it the thing that we did together that's wrong? Is it wrong that I had fun? Is it wrong that you were trying to help me? It's a nightmare. And kids who go back and forth like twice or three times a week, I can't even imagine that. It's nonstop. It's transition all the time. They never get to feel settled. And I don't know whoever thought that 2-2-3 or whatever was a good workable solution to 50-50 custody. It's so hard on everybody.
Agreed. Yes.
Unless there's, a great situation where the parents are trying so hard with each other to make it work for the kids. And, but oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if mom's listening, if I know we use so many nuggets, if they were to do one thing that they could start implementing, one or two things right now, what would you suggest? Where to start?
Where to start? I would say to start by thinking of ways that you can gift your stepkids a little more of their dad.
So good.
And, when you are giving a gift, you are in control of the situation.
Yeah.
So it feels inside much nicer to say to a child, come sit next to daddy, than for you to be, for him to elbow you out of the way so that his child can sit down. Like,
Agreed,
do it
yes.
yourself, right? And feel good about it because you've given a gift. You say, come and sit next to your dad. So you've given somebody a gift, and it's always a good feeling to be generous, right?
Love that. Yeah.
So, find ways that you can say, why don't you guys go and do that? And I'm going to stay home and tidy up or do my knitting or, do my yoga tape or whatever. But, send them away to have a little outing together. Or, even if, so there are some situations where, let's say for the women who are watching here, you probably have your own child together. And then there's a step kid who comes in to the picture. So bringing dad into the conversation or into the activity, like, let's make a craft and give it to dad, or let's do a picture and let's give this one to dad. Just bringing him in when he's not there. If it's about discipline, all the rules are dad's rules. They have to be, they're not your rules, they're dad's rules, because you are nobody to this person. Even if you've known them since they were really little, they have to be dad's rules. So, you have to learn to be able to say, I think that your dad doesn't want you to do that, or your dad asked me to make sure that we didn't do too much of this or that or whatever.
Yeah.
But, to be letting dad set the consequences. And sometimes that's really hard because dad is super happy not to have to do that, right? He wants to be the Mr. Nice Guy all the time. So just give it some thought and think of ways that you can give the gift of more dad and heck, it gives you more time.
Agree.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like it's a total win-win, and it's just about changing your head space around that.
Yeah.
And you know, it really is just a head thing, because I'll tell you one more thing. Okay. We
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
recently, it was Thanksgiving here in Canada, and my daughter is, my stepdaughter is at university already. And we were going to Toronto to have Thanksgiving dinner with a big group of my friends, which I do every year. And we also visited my parents who live in the same city. So my husband had asked his daughter if she wanted to come with us for Thanksgiving dinner, and she said she did. And I thought, yay, that's great. We haven't seen her in, a really long time. And wow, I'm kind of surprised that she wants to come with us. That's really
Yeah.
great. But he brought her up to visit my parents before we were going to dinner. And he didn't realize that she thought we were having dinner there with my parents. And she loves my parents, actually. They're very close, and I think that's wonderful. So she was like kind of bent out of shape because she thought the dinner was happening there, and she really didn't feel like going to have dinner with my friends. So I chose to not feel dissed about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, the truth is, this is way better because my parents are getting to have a visit with my husband stayed there with her, and they had dinner with my parents. So they're getting to have this unexpected nice company for dinner. And I'm getting to go and be with my friends, and I don't have to worry the whole time that, that my husband and his daughter are sitting there somewhere like entertaining themselves because they don't really know these people. Like, it was perfect.
Nice.
But
Nice.
I could have chosen to say, my whole evening is ruined because, here this girl came and she didn't want to come with us. And so then we had to change our whole plans, and I had to go there by myself. Like, no, it was just great the way it was. I got time to myself, and they got to have this nice visit, and it was just fine.
Yeah.
So, it's really just about adjusting your expectation and adjusting your idea of what's okay, and keeping your own best interests in the forefront. Because again, what I want is for the long term, for there to be more positive interactions between us than negative ones. And why would I drag somebody along who doesn't want to, you know what I mean? Like,
agreed. Yes.
So it's much better to just, try to put a positive spin as much as you can on whatever's happening.
That's awesome. Now, stepmoms that are listening, I will have a link below for those who are on the car or doing whatever. How can they find out more about you? What's their best way to do that?
Well, I think the best way is to search the Spectacular Stepmom, which is the name of my Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also the name of my YouTube channel. So there's lots of videos there, and they're welcome to join the Spectacular Stepmom Facebook group.
Yes.
My website is tracypoizner.com, but that's probably not so easy to remember if you're not sitting down writing it. And I think you're gonna link to a little free report guide that I have called 3 Secrets of Successful Stepmoms. That is just a little bit of advice.
Mm-hmm. So I love that. So many good nuggets of truths, and just even for myself, a whole different way of looking at even my own mothering, taking it not from me. So I so much appreciate you sharing with us, Tracy, and all the great information you gave us.
Thank you so much. This was a real pleasure, and so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.